Meanwhile, President Trump slashing Biden's bloated clean energy programs, and the cuts are already being felt. They even plan to claw back $20 billion earmarked for climate projects allocated during Biden's double bird lame duck period last year. And what else has DOGE uncovered? Just tens of millions wasted on social programs for just about every country in the world. There's social cohesion in Malai, a gender equality hub in Cambodia. HUD, that's Housing and Urban Development, misplaced, $1.9 billion under Joe Biden's watch. That's not loose change. You don't find that in sofa cushions. That's a national GDP. Kevin, what do you make of what President Trump, Elon Musk, and DOGE have managed to not just uncover, but claw back and stop in just a matter of weeks?
This is wildly popular because we have a unique situation. You've got Elon Musk with his own international broadcast network. He can publish anything he wants on it any time. He goes into these agencies, 48 hours later, puts a list of crazy stuff like you just detailed. People see it all through the U.S. and around the world and say, this is nuts. And it just fuels what else is out there. So what's happening here has never happened before. He could only do this with the power of the executive behind him because all of the people that are managing these mandates and these programs are being embarrassed by this. Whether you just got the job or whether you were there in the Biden administration, Elon doesn't care who you are. He just publishes it anyways, and then it's all over your face. There's a lot of tension going on here with the management of these programs, and particularly when we start talking with the FAA and the Pentagon. I mean, oh, baby, wait till that one comes out, because that is always going to be a black hole saying, well, it's for defense, and I can't tell you what it's for. But now there's accountability. There's so much fat dripping off these chickens. This is the best barbecue I've ever seen.
Charles, instead of making money, it's losing money. It's losing money because of bureaucrats. And it comes back to repeat myself, because I'm elderly and I don't really remember what I said yesterday. It is my money. It is your money. Every dollar, either you gave it to the government unwillingly because you were taxed, or the government has borrowed it on your back and the back of your children and your grandchildren.
Right. So it's not really losing money. I mean, outside of the taxpayer, someone's making a lot of money. I think that's the part that's making it, Kevin, even more popular in the sense that someone's getting my money. It didn't go to these starving kids. It didn't go to whatever the name of the agency is. You know, they're really great at that. You know, the Affordable Care Act, you know, or Inflation Reduction Act. They name things really well to hide and steal money. I think what's really got people upset from all sides of the political aisle. This is theft. This is grand theft. Might be the greatest heist in history as we go through it. And it's really interesting. You know, every couple of years, the American Society for Civil Engineers comes out with the grades of our infrastructure. So this stuff is an unknown. This is the last grade they gave for FAA. They noted that more people are traveling, right? And we've seen that, a huge travel boom from 900 million to over 1.2 billion people travel, right? They were already projected to have a budget shortfall of $111 billion over a 10-year period. And so you say, well, we keep shoveling money in there. Where does it go? Who is getting it? And why are the skies becoming less safe? This is the stuff that resonates. When planes start colliding, when things aren't done, and yet everyone knows that every time they get their paycheck, one thing always happens. The government takes out a big chunk of it, to your point, and for some reason, we've allowed this to exist. Even though we've kind of all knew it, and we've heard anecdotes here and there, we've allowed it to exist to the extent that it has, and this is the ultimate wake-up call.
And now I think we're at the point where it's not just the amount that they take out of your paycheck. They're going to say, we don't have enough, and we need to ask you for more.
Right.
And people just can't take that with inflation, cost of living going up, housing costs have gone up, all under the Biden administration. Trump is working on that, but it's not going to happen overnight. And so when people hear you might actually want to ask me for more, then I really need to think about this. And I'm not talking about the Republicans or this administration. I'm talking about the Democrats. Certainly, if Kamala Harris had been elected president, that's the kind of conversation that you would be having. And at the end of the day, why aren't we running our country like a corporation? Why aren't we looking for efficiency? Why aren't we treating this like an income statement and a balance sheet? The shareholders are the American people, and that's their money that they invested to put to work. I think it's because at the end of the day, if you run amok and you have a lot of chaos out there, you know, we talk about it, whether it's the education department or whatever, they still can control you in that way and say, oh, see, everything's so chaotic. We're the ones. We're going to come and help you fix it. That's not what's going to happen.
My worry, though, as it always has been, is that it gets tied up in courts and delays this. And Kevin, I think one thing we've talked about is you're bringing the speed of business to big, slow government. And big, slow government doesn't like the speed of the private sector business. So things are getting tied up in courts, and you're going to have it play out. And some of my colleagues think, I think Brian would say this if he were here, you know, it's great. Take it to the Supreme Court so we can get a final answer. I get worried that then we don't have that time. You know, the markets, the American people, small businesses, we want DOGE to act now. We want results now. I want them to start cutting things now. If I were a bankrupt company and I had 30 days to pay my employees, I would stem the bleeding now. And I get worried that when we tie this up in courts, it slows down the momentum in the process.
I think it will get tied up in court, but even if 25% gets tied up in court, the other 75% goes through. Plus, the advantage of this tactic of using social media this way for the first time is the story doesn't go away. You know, the $20 million on condoms story doesn't go away.
Right.
So it just keeps coming at you because Elon just keeps turning it on. And you know, people say, oh, he overpaid for Twitter. I don't think so anymore.
No.
This is really interesting what he's doing. I don't know if he planned it this way, but when you have your own network, you can do some crazy chicken stuff.
Well, there are a lot better legal analysts, like professors, legal scholars, constitutional scholars on X, former Twitter, talking about what is going on with these lawsuits than you read about in all the kind of regime media. That's where I've been going to read about the legal ramifications and the constitutional foundation for what is happening and for the executive power that President Trump is rightly exerting.
You know, by the way, there's also the court of public opinion.
Right.
Right. And so whoever is pushing these legal challenges that invariably probably a lot of them are going to lose, right, are going to have to answer for that as well.
Yes.
Right? They're going to have to.
And just a
like
quick
the people
point.
making the most noise are like, well, why are you the one who don't? I thought everyone in Washington was supposed to want the government to work for the people. If you're saying you don't want to stop waste, fraud, and abuse, then you have to explain it to me. Maybe you're one of the people benefiting from it.
And pretty quickly, as we've been tracking these cases, they are actually being decided in favor of the administration because the legal arguments that they're being made on are completely unsound. And the judges may be liberal and they may be appointed by Obama and Biden and some even date back to Clinton, but they realize that they can't even put their stamp on it.
President Trump says that the media, the regime media, is trying to drive a wedge between him and Elon Musk.
Actually, Elon called me. He said, you know, they're trying to drive us apart. I said, absolutely. No, they said, we have breaking news. Donald Trump has ceded control of the presidency to Elon Musk. President Musk will be attending a cabinet meeting tonight at 8 o'clock. And I say, it's just so obvious. People are smart. They get it.
Yeah, they do, actually.
They get it.
President Trump spoke with Netanyahu after Hamas failed to release all the hostages by that Saturday noon deadline. Watch this.
I told Bibi, you do whatever you want because, you know, my statement was they got to come back. Now, the reason I made that statement because they said they weren't going to deliver, they were not going to deliver the people that they said they were going to deliver, that they agreed to deliver. And they did agree to do that, but they broke that agreement.
All right, Trump's nominee for U.S. ambassador to Israel is Mike Huckabee, who joins us this morning. Sir, Trump says, do whatever you want. What does that mean?
I think it means exactly what it says. Do whatever you want. President Trump has been so clear in just saying that, look, America stands with Israel in this. Israel didn't start this war. Hamas did by massacring over 1,200 innocent civilians, just butchering them, and doing it in such a way that we can't even discuss the details on a television show. It was truly that bad. And then taking hostage 250 people and holding them in their horrid conditions, many of whom now are in their 500 days of this captivity, and it's just gone on too long. And the president's lost his patience with it. So he's saying, first of all, Hamas can't survive. They can't, they won't. So if there's any notion in Hamas that they're going to somehow still be in power, still be able to govern Gaza, they need to forget about it. Their best shot would be to surrender, run up the white flag, let the hostages go, and let the people who have tried to live there start rebuilding their lives.
What really gets to me, frankly, sir, is that the Hamas has its supporters in the United States Congress. To this day, they have supporters. I can't work that out.
It's beyond comprehension that anybody would understand what they did, what they continue to do, the threats they've continued to make, even as recently as a week ago, saying they want to have another October 7th, and somehow show support for that. These are very sick people. And the sick people are not just the ones in Hamas. The sicker ones are the ones who know what they did and live in the United States, some of whom even serve in Congress, and think it was okay, or at least think it was justified. Stu, that's why we've got a real issue in this country, and why I'm so absolutely glad Donald Trump is in the White House and not Joe Biden, who had a schizophrenic policy when it came to Israel and Hamas. One day, he's all for Israel. The next day, he puts more pressure on them to have a ceasefire than he did on Hamas to release American hostages. This was insane, and it's cost us a lot of time, money, and human lives.
Mr. Ambassador, Secretary of State Rubio, he's coming to J.D. Vance's defense after CBS host Margaret Brennan slammed the vice president's Munich speech. You've got to watch this. Roll tape.
He was standing in a country where free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide. And he met with the head of a political party that has far-right views and some historic ties to extreme groups. The context of that was changing the tone of it. And you know that the censorship...
Well, I have to disagree with you. Free speech was not used to conduct a genocide. The genocide was conducted by an authoritarian Nazi regime. There was no free speech in Nazi Germany.
Governor, set the record straight on history here, please. Free speech caused the Holocaust? I don't think so, and neither do you.
You know, I just wonder, did Margaret Brennan, is she so stupid she actually believes that? Or did somebody just write the script and she read it off the teleprompter, kind of like Ron Burgundy from Anchorman, who had no idea what he was reading. He just read what was put in front of him. Because that was one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in my life. And I've heard some pretty dumb things on television. But for somebody to be a part of what used to be considered the Tiffany Network, where Edward R. Murrow and Walter Cronkite once read the news, and you have someone saying that free speech was prevalent in Nazi Germany. Are you kidding me? If you spoke out against the Fuhrer, you got a bullet in the head. That's what free speech got you in Germany. Surely she didn't flunk history that badly.
All right, I'm going to move on from there because that's exasperating. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, he says Trump is, quote, deadly serious about not allowing Iran to get a nuclear weapon. Watch this.
I could speak to what the president has repeatedly said, and that is Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. That not only would be existential for Israel, I think it would be existential for the entire world because it could kick off a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. President Trump is absolutely serious, deadly serious, when he says Iran can never have a nuke, and certainly not on President Trump's watch. They are an irrational actor that we cannot allow to have their finger on the button.
Doesn't it sound to you, sir, like an attack on Iran's nuclear facilities is coming?
Either that or they're going to surrender it. They're not going to get one. And I think that's pretty clear. And you know who's giving a standing ovation to that doctrine? Everyone else in the entire world who has a brain. And that includes the people from Saudi Arabia, the Emiratis, throughout the region. They all understand Israel is no threat to them. They don't have to worry that Israel is going to launch an attack on Egypt or Jordan or the Saudis. No, they're worried about Iran. And so absolutely what Michael Waltz said and the president's policy, I think, is crystal clear. And whether it's Israel that pulls the trigger or it's a combination of nations, I hope the Iranian leaders, as crazed as they are, have at least enough sense to listen carefully to what's being said. They're not going to have a nuclear weapon. Full stop.
Ambassador nominee Mike Huckabee, thank you very much for joining us, sir. Always a pleasure. Thanks very much.
Always a pleasure, Stu. Thanks.
You got it.
All right, joining me now, we welcome Senator Ted Cruz of the great state of Texas back to the show. Senator Cruz, welcome, sir. First off, what'd you make of the Hannity interview last night with the president and Elon Musk? I'm sure you saw it.
Look, I think the president and Elon Musk are an incredibly potent team, and I'm really glad they're both good friends. I know them both exceedingly well, and I think it's very good for America that the two of them have become such close friends and such close partners. You look at Elon Musk, he's the richest man on the face of the planet. He could be doing anything he wanted, including running any of his multiple companies, and instead he's come to work for the American people for free and bringing his prodigious talents to taking on sprawling government spending, out of control waste. And I got to say, every day what DOGE is uncovering, it is breathtaking. I'm grateful for it, and I'm grateful that he and President Trump are working so well together.
And it seems like, I mean, look, by Elon's own words, we talked about this a little bit in the first segment, but I want to get your take on it. I mean, he's kind of the high-tech assistant, but he's also going to be the implementer or enforcer of President Trump's policies, particularly his executive orders throughout the government. And I think that is the most powerful jet fuel enforcer in the history of presidential politics.
Well, look, I think Elon Musk is very much a change agent. He is. You think about it, there are 8 billion people on planet Earth, and if you assume intelligence is distributed on a bell curve, Larry, you and I have both known some incredibly smart people. Someone is at the bleeding edge of that bell curve, and I think his name is Elon. I mean, it is, you spend time with him. Elon doesn't just think outside the box. He doesn't know there's a box. It's an incredible thing. Right. And I will say it is an incredible asset to President Trump to have someone like Elon willing to dive in night and day and pour his prodigious talents into fighting for President Trump's agenda. I'll also say there are an awful lot of Democrats and a lot of folks in the corporate media who are desperate to try to drive a wedge between President Trump and Elon Musk. They're doing everything they can to try to create friction. And as far as I can tell, those efforts have been an utter failure. The two are working hand in hand, and that's good for America.
Yeah, and I think that showed up beautifully in the Hannity interview last night. Senator Ted Cruz, President Trump on Truth Social today. One big beautiful bill. He likes what's happening in the House. He said we don't need the Senate bill. What's your take? You know, this has a familiar ring to it. I think you and I talked about this a few months ago, but I don't want to remind anybody of it. But the fact is, we don't need another Senate bill. We got a House bill that's got everything in it. It's what the president wants. Can you just give him what he wants, sir?
Well, I'll tell you what, Larry, you and I and the president, we're all on the same page that we want to succeed in delivering on our promises, that failure is not an option. And that's true whether it is one bill or two bill. As I told you, there continue to be real risks in the House of failure of a gigantic bill with a tiny margin for error. And so I'll tell you that the Senate's perspective is that we need to have dual tracks. We need to have options to make sure we get this done. And so today at lunch, we had Vice President J.D. Vance joined us at lunch. We had a robust discussion with the Vice President and John Thune, who laid out that the Senate is going to continue to proceed with the budget resolution we have in front of us so that we ensure there is a path to deliver, number one, to secure the border, number two, to rebuild the military, number three, to unleash American energy, and number four, something you and I care deeply about, to extend the 2017 tax cuts and to make them bigger and bolder. We got to get all of that done, and that means we need every avenue available to accomplish that result.
Senator Cruz, 2 or 3 bills puts the tax cuts on the back burner. And companies, large and small, and middle-income working folks who have made up the new Republican coalition will definitely feel that they're on the back burner, that you got elected, but you didn't keep this promise. This is the risk you're making. If you don't put the tax cuts in first, this is the risk. And by the by, it puts a freeze on all kinds of business investment spending, and I think the stock market would be enormously disappointed.
So, Larry, there is no Republican in the Senate or the House who wants to see a $4 trillion tax increase kick in at the end of the year. That is not going to happen. But you know well, the process of negotiating the tax bill is going to take months. There are lots of trade-offs back and forth. There are trade-offs that are not just ideological, but they're trade-offs between big businesses and little businesses, between families, between blue states and red states, geographic. All of that takes time. And what you don't want to see and what I don't want to see is the House try to do everything all at once in a giant enchilada and have it collapse in failure in August and we don't get anything done. That would be catastrophic. And so we cannot let that happen.
You'll never get more than one bite out of the apple in the House. Everybody knows that. I'll just say this one thing. I said this in the first segment, or I said it in my riff. Senator Crapo keeps saying to people that extending the tax cuts is a neutral act. It's a policy baseline. It's current baseline, current policy baseline. And second of all, budget committees under reconciliation rules and law have the right to create their own baseline. You all, in other words, in short, Senator Cruz, you're making it harder, or you're making it sound harder than it needs to be.
Larry, I love you, and we found the only topic on earth we disagree on. But listen, I think Mike Crapo is absolutely right that we should use current policy as our baseline. And it's real simple, because the Democrats are arguing, no. You got to say that maintaining the current tax law, maintaining the 2017 tax cuts cost $4.5 trillion. Now, that is utter fiction, and it makes it much, much harder to get it accomplished. And so that's the path the Senate's going to take, is we're going to follow current policy, which is what the precedent has been in the past. And by the way, the Democrats always do this for spending, and they have the field tilted in favor of more spending and in favor of higher taxes. That's backwards.
That's what they want. But again, I'm saying to you, it should be a neutral baseline extending the tax cuts. Let me move on, Senator Cruz.
Well, then we're agreeing on that, Larry.
All right. Well, phew, I'm glad to hear that. Now, Ukraine, Zelensky, all right? President Trump today really gave him a shot across the bow. Stop talking back. Stop undermining Trump's peace efforts with Putin. And eventually we'll include Ukraine and other people as well. Just stop. He called him essentially a dictator and said martial law. He couldn't win an election in Ukraine. What do you make of that? What do you personally think about that?
Well, listen, number one, it was clear when President Trump campaigned throughout last year that he was campaigning, among other things, on ending the war in Ukraine. The war in Ukraine was caused by Joe Biden's weakness, his weakness as commander-in-chief. It was caused by Joe Biden waiving the sanctions on the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline that runs from Russia to Germany. As you know, I authored those sanctions, and Putin stopped building the Nord Stream 2 pipeline literally the day President Trump signed my sanctions legislation into law. So Biden caused the war, but Trump campaigned saying he was going to end the war. And I've been very clear, we will see this war end, and I think it will end in the first half of this year. I think the president is trying to negotiate that resolution. My hope is it is a resolution where the war ends, and it is a clear and indisputable loss for Putin and loss for Russia. That's the outcome I want to see. I think that's the outcome that's good for America. I will say this. I don't think President Zelensky is doing himself any favors by running to the European press and attacking President Trump. You and I both know President Trump very well, and that is a strategy that is almost designed in a lab to produce the opposite of the outcome he's trying to get. And so I think he probably needs to recalibrate his approach.
Yeah, boy, well, you and I agree on that. Anyway, Senator Ted Cruz of the great state of Texas, one big, beautiful senator. Thank you, Mr. Cruz. We appreciate your coming on.
Mexico's Senate has approved letting U.S. Special Forces into their country. They will be training Mexico's Marines. Look who's here now, Trump's border czar, Tom Homan. Tom, is this what you meant when you said we'd bring the weight of the world down on the cartels?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's a part of it, but President Trump designated these criminal cartels as terrorist organizations, and for a couple of reasons, Byron. Number one, they've killed more Americans than every terrorist organization in the world combined, and they've killed thousands of journalists and politicians and Mexican officials. And look, I think Mexico wants to be free of the cartels. I mean, they failed to shut them down in 3 decades. You've got to remember, a lot of these corrupt Mexican officials, they don't want to be corrupt, but they're told by the cartels, you will do this, or we will kill you and your family. They're forced into this. So I think Mexico is welcoming the United States, helping them take the cartels off the face of the earth.
I believe you are accusing the FBI of leaking details about planned ICE raids. You say they're putting agents' lives at risk. How do you handle leaks within the FBI?
Well, what I said was, the first leak, we already identified the first leak, it was not in the FBI, but the second leak, there's some information that tends to believe it came from the FBI, but I want to be clear on this. We have thousands of FBI agents on the street with us every day doing the interior enforcement operation. These men and women are great patriots, doing a great job. So we'll see if there's a leak within the FBI. That's being investigated by the Department of Justice Inspector General. So we'll see where that leads. But look, how do we stop the leaks? We just keep going forward. You're going to have those few that take a political angle to this. And I've sent messages out to the entire agencies involved in this operation. When you want to take a political stance and you want to make a leak because you want illegal aliens arrested, what you're in fact doing is putting lives of agents at risk, because we are concentrating on public safety threats, national security threats, such as Trending Iowa, TDA. We don't need TDA knowing we're coming to that residence at a certain time, because they can ambush our agents. So it puts our agents at extreme risk. They're already a dangerous job, right? They got to go arrest really bad people. So any leak puts them at greater risk. So we're addressing it. The IG is doing an investigation, and DOJ finds that leak. They will prosecute that leak.
We're told that some cities, there are spotters, neighborhood watchers. And when they see people who look like ICE agents around, the word gets out and people disappear. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, we're seeing that. We got the groups going across, letting people know where we're at and when we're hitting the city. And that happens through a lot of investigations over the last couple of decades. What concerns me, though, you got members of Congress, telling these people that we're looking for, don't open your door, don't talk to us, don't say a word, and you don't have to answer questions. But the big thing is, don't answer the door, hide in your home, and don't talk to ICE when they come to your door. Again, I'll say it again. We are concentrating on public safety threats. These are people in the United States illegally. They've been convicted of a serious criminal violation, a public safety violation. And they've been ordered removed by an immigration judge. They had due process at great taxpayer expense, so they've been ordered removed. We have members of Congress educating them on how to evade ICE. I find that deeply troubling.
Why did the administration fire more than a dozen immigration judges?
I'm not in the loop on that. I can only guess. I mean, let's remember, under the Biden administration, soon Biden became president, he fired a lot of immigration judges. The leftist says they're going to put a lot of judges in the Supreme Court. They want to stack the Supreme Court. That's exactly what they did when Biden became president. He got rid of conservative judges and stacked the immigration courts with far-left woke judges. So I can only assume that some of these judges aren't doing the job they're supposed to be doing in ruling on the statute. Making decisions on the rule of law rather than woke policies. That is my guess. I wasn't in the loop on that, but I'm not surprised this happened.
The administration said the worst of the worst were the people. They were the people that's going to be held in Gitmo. But there's an article in the Washington Post this morning that says that some family members of those detained say they're being falsely branded as members of Tren de Aragua. What's your response to that, Tom?
That's the Washington Post. I mean, look, President Trump's been clear. We're going to put the worst of the worst at Gitmo. And look, and I've said it before, I'll say it again. No one's off the table. If you're in this country illegally, it's not okay. But President Trump has said from day one, we're going to concentrate on public safety threats and national security threats. Varney, I looked at the numbers today. In the last 24 hours, a total of 229 people were encountered by the Border Patrol on the southwest border. 229. I haven't seen that. I've been doing this job since 1984 as a Border Patrol agent. I've never seen the numbers that low. 229 compared to 11,000 a day under Biden. We've doubled the number of criminal aliens arrested. We've doubled the number of illegal aliens arrested in the interior. We've doubled the number of gang members, Tren de Agua and MS-13. President Trump made a promise to American people, and we're keeping that promise. The numbers are extraordinary. We're not there yet. We got more to do. But I look at those numbers this morning, I just shake my head at how much President Trump has accomplished in less than a month.
Got it. Tom Homan, Border Czar. Thanks for joining us, Tom. Always a pleasure. We'll see you again real soon. Thank you, sir.
You know, I wanted to find somebody smarter than him. I searched all over. I just couldn't do it. They're not going to find some contract that was crooked, you know, crooked as hell. And, I mean, there's going to be so much that isn't found. But what is found, I think he's going to find $1 trillion.
DOGE and Elon Musk continuing their search for wasteful spending, claiming to already have saved the government tens of billions of dollars so far. And now they're eyeing the Social Security Administration.
There was an Inspector General audit last year that showed over an 8-year period, the Social Security Administration made almost $72 billion in improper payments.
$72 billion, and that's without a comprehensive search. I mean, that's significant.
Plus, it might be time to cut up the plastic. DOGE says it found $40 billion in government credit card spending. Let's put it this way. Elon Musk thinks they'll cut enough waste and fraud to pay taxpayers a $5,000 DOGE savings dividend. But the left, well, they're not happy, and they're pushing back against all of it.
Doesn't help anybody, but it tells me that people are worried that, that they're part of the waste, fraud, and abuse.
And why are you not celebrating these cuts? If you agree there is waste, if you agree there is abuse, if you agree there is corruption, why are you not celebrating the cuts, the reforms that are being instituted?
Welcome to the second hour of the Big Money Show. I'm Brian Brenberg, and I'm joined by my co-host Taylor Riggs, Lydia Hu in for Dagan McDowell, Jackie DeAngelis, and joining us for the hour, you already heard his voice. Here he is, Larry Kudlow. Larry,
I just want Steve, you know, want the
settle down a little.
Blood pressure down. He's got a beautiful wife and a couple of kids. Blood pressure down.
He's got 4 years. You got to keep the blood pressure down. But Larry, he makes a good point. There's no celebration on the left for anything happening here that's saving taxpayer money. Is that a huge mistake for Democrats?
The left is on the wrong side of an 80-20 issue. All right, 80% of the country loves this stuff. 20% is the left. I mean, this was the kind of mistake they've been making all along, actually throughout the election campaign, and they're still making it, and it's just enormous. It boggles the mind. By the way, that interview last night with Hannity last night I thought was just fabulous. But, you know, among the many things that came out of that interview, besides the number, I mean, Elon used, I think, $1 trillion that he will find. My guess is he may find more. They're going into every single agency. But what he said was he is going to be the tech enforcer.
Yes, that's when he opened his shirt.
That's right. Of President Trump's executive orders. He's going to be the tech enforcer, all right? Whether it's deregulation or energy or DEI and other things like that, and, of course, waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption. He's going to be the enforcer, and that's what they've never had. I mean, Reagan tried this and never quite got through the Peter Grace Commission. Days gone by, Clinton and Gore talked about it, even Obama talked about it, but they never went through with it, lack of political will, but they didn't have an enforcer. Elon is the jet fuel behind these executive orders and Trump's transformation of the government, and it's an incredible thing. It's a wonderful story.
There's his tech support.
Yeah.
Is that the T-shirt you're talking about,
I think
Jackie?
it was. Oh, sorry, he opened up his jacket, the lapels of his jacket, and that's what it said on his T-shirt under there. It was like very
superhero.
superhero.
So you approve of the DOGE wardrobe, is what you're saying?
I do, and you know what's interesting to me, Larry, to your point, is nobody has ever done this before. Nobody's ever been able to implement it. These two men are trying to do it together, and what does the left-wing media do? Attack both of them, try to cause rifts between them, because they don't want to see this relationship flourish, essentially, and they don't want to see these savings come back to the American people. And so when we talk about a left progressive party that's completely out of touch with the working class and America and the people that voted for Donald Trump, you see why. They just never seem to learn from their mistakes.
Well, you know, 3 or 4 weeks later, the left has failed to drive a wedge between the two.
Yeah.
And what you saw last night was, you know, the equivalent of a love-in, basically. And I think that's very important. You know, President Trump said, you know, he looked for smarter people, but he couldn't find one. He called him caring and compassionate and brilliant. And the other thing that was so interesting is how young people, I think Trump made this point, young, smart, high IQ, techie people coming to Elon. Think of that, though, in the whole election. You know, Trump did monumentally well and better with young people, the youth vote, so-called, than anybody ever dreamed possible. I mean, it's very Reagan-esque, I might add. Reagan used to get the young, too, even though he himself was a whole lot older. This is just 11. They'll never drive a wedge. What's going to happen is Elon and his group, going into every agency will succeed in transforming the government. And you also saw the regulatory executive order that came out last night, that Trump is tightening the grip on these so-called independent regulatory agencies, the SEC, the FCC, all of them, which are not, they are not independent, okay? They're just appointed by the president. The bureaucracy is going to have to change or they're going to get the axe from Elon. This is just part of it. It's a massive transformation of the government.
Well, now they're going to have to send reports directly to the White House for review by the administration. They'll look at them. They'll see if they're aligned with what their goals and objectives are so that he can, you know, rein in the powers. We've talked about it on this show. Some of these agencies really get...
The only problem and pushback I have, Jackie, is I missed the Occupy Mars shirt because we all want to go to space, and he promised me we were going to plant the stars and the stripes on Mars and maybe on the moon again.
He's bringing the astronauts
So I
back.
still want the Occupy Mars shirt. On a serious note, Jackie and Lydia, correct me if I'm wrong, you've had a few good court wins from the DOGE team lately, one of which said they ruled against the 14 states, ruled for DOGE continuing, because she said the mere possibility that defendants may take actions that irreparably harm the plaintiffs is not enough to grant emergency relief. Basically, they haven't shown imminent harm. They haven't shown any harm. They've conjectured about maybe future harm that may come down the road. And she said, if you bring me that, great. But we need to see real harm if you're going to go through with these lawsuits.
Yes, and you're so right to point that out because the standard that the attorneys generals were up against with this temporary restraining order is quite high because it is designed to be that way so they can, in the right situation, allow a court to stop a party like DOGE from doing what they want to do. Only if there's going to be immediate harm that cannot be corrected, which is not the scenario here. But what I was noticing in Judge Chutkan's opinion, which I think we should underscore here, is that she also referred to Elon Musk and calling him an unelected person in power, and said that the plaintiffs, the Democratic attorney generals, were right to call that out. She is kind of laying the groundwork for what I would expect to be continued attacks that are going to be ongoing by Democratic lawmakers. Although that wasn't a controlling precedent of her opinion, that dicta is really important for shaping the ongoing conversation.
She's a lefty Trump hater. She was the, the Jack Smith stooge there in the district court in Washington, D.C. She can't help herself. She's a big lefty. For the record, Elon Musk is, quote, a special government employee. Second point is the DOGE team, now there's a lot of them, are in fact government employees. They have been duly vetted and have taken their spot. And third point is the bureaucracy. Were they elected? Did I miss something?
Great
the bureaucracy
question,
they're going after is completely unelected, and therein lies the problem. And Judge Chutkan is not going to understand that, but we don't need her because they're doing things legally. That's the thing.
Yes, they are.
In some cases, by the way, when they were told to stop a freeze or a pause, guess what? They stopped the freeze or a pause. Now they can come right back at it after this decision. So
what's amazing me though is the handful of very liberal left-appointed judges, Taylor, to your point, who were not able to say, or not able to go along with some of these arguments to shut DOGE down or to try to at least stop them further in their tracks. Those are judges, Larry, that turned around and realized they are doing it legally. And if I do that, when this goes to the Supreme Court, I'm going to have egg on my face, so I better just stop.
See, I just want to say, on behalf of the judiciary, of which I am not a member, even some...
Like the only one up here.
Even some left-wing judges, have integrity. All right, I'm going to say even some of them abide by the law. Not all of them. Maybe not even many of them, but some of them.
That's a big admission from Larry Kudlow.
In just the first month, the Trump administration already faces 74 lawsuits, 33 of which have been filed against DOGE. Joining me now is Fox News Sunday anchor and chief legal correspondent Shannon Bream. Shannon, will these lawsuits, there's lots of them, Will they slow the president down?
They might, Stu. I mean, we know that there are certain judges who have already issued some injunctions or at least temporarily putting these things on pause. But the Trump administration is not going to slow down if it doesn't have to. They've already appealed at least one of these cases to the Supreme Court. We're waiting. We could get a ruling at any point now on this decision to fire a top official. And what the Trump administration says is, listen, if a lower court can stop me from firing people within the executive branch and doing the work of the presidency, it's going to not only harm me, but harm the presidency as a whole more long term. So we'll wait and see what the justices think about that.
The president said, look, he's open to using some of the money saved by DOGE for dividend checks. Watch this, Shannon.
We give 20% of the DOGE savings to American citizens and 20% goes to paying down debt. By doing this, Americans will tell us where there's waste. They'll be reporting it themselves. They participate in the process of saving money.
Shannon, is this another item that Democrats could block through the courts?
I would not be surprised if they would try to do it, but they'll have to turn around and look, as we all know, over the Biden and Obama and other Democratic administrations, there have been times in which money has been given back, stimulus checks or other things with the current president's name on them. Every president knows that that hits the mailbox of a person. And at a time they're struggling still with inflation and gas and eggs and all of these things, it makes a real world connection for people to get that check in their hands and say, oh man, I'll be able to breathe a little bit easier for a month or two, do some things with the kids, maybe sneak in a summer vacation this year. But there are those debating this who say, no, let's put it all towards getting down debt and deficit. Let's not turn it back to the American people. It sounds like the president is considering something that would do a little bit of both.
It sounds to me like at some point everything goes to the Supreme Court and they make the ruling on the whole lot. Is that right?
Yeah, I think a lot of these cases, and of course, you know, our viewers know that the Supreme Court doesn't have to take any case. It is that last court of jurisdiction, and they only take maybe 70 cases a year for their term. So they can't possibly take every single one of these, disputes that's coming to them, but they can probably take the biggest of the big that will really possibly shape the contours of the executive branch's power.
Big deal. Shannon Bream, we're going to watch you every weekend on Fox News Sunday. Thanks for being on this show with us today. Thanks so much, Shannon.
Thank you.
Here to react, former Assistant Secretary of State for Reagan and Bush 41, Robert Charles, and Foundation for Defense of Democracy's founder, Cliff May. Cliff, to you first on this. I know one thing. President Trump is the only guy not responsible for any of this. And to quote Michael Waltz, the National Security Advisor, he said that a few months ago, everybody was talking about this war as if it would never end. Now we're talking and debating now how it will end. What say you?
Well, I think there is a way to achieve the goals that President Trump and his top advisors, Scott Bessent, Mike Waltz, Marco Rubio, have discussed in the past. For what it's worth, I have a column in the Washington Times today talking about exactly that. What are the goals? A ceasefire would be good, a cessation of hostilities. That's not peace and concord, but that's a good thing. And then you want to guarantee the independence of Ukraine going forward. That's really vital. We don't want Ukraine swallowed up by Russia in that empire, and then Putin using those resources to take on other countries, including those in NATO. And a relationship economically with the U.S. I think Trump is right based on the fact that there are untapped resources in Ukraine, mineral wealth, rare earths, and if those rare earths can buy Ukraine peace and independence and freedom, I think that's a win-win. It's a win for Ukraine. It's a win for America. It's a win for Trump 2.0. But Putin doesn't get to swallow Ukraine and crush that country.
Robert, speaking for myself, I take issue with a few of the things that Trump said, a few of the characterizations, and then he also seemed to suggest yesterday that Ukraine started the war, which isn't true. That being said, I'm sort of puzzled by Zelensky's choices here to start kind of poking at Trump and taking the shot that he did about the disinformation bubble, or however he framed it. Has he not learned how Donald Trump works over these last number of years? It seems like if he wants to get something out of this administration, saying, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, maybe not the best approach.
Yeah, look, some people have a hard time reckoning with reality. The jig is up for Mr. Zelensky. Of the 32 countries that are NATO countries, if you take 31 of them that are not the United States and add up what they spent on this war, and then you add in what we spent more than all other 31 members of NATO on this war. This is an endless war unless it gets ended. And what Trump is looking at right now is the obvious geopolitical incentives to get this to a close right now. Russia has lost more than they've lost in any war at any point except World War II. They are at a bottom. They are getting their ammunition from China. They're getting their men from North Korea. They're in a bad position. Okay, Zelensky, meanwhile, has actually one of the most corrupt governments on the face of the planet, and he had that before this war began. And he is not well regarded by a lot of people. And what do you think is going to happen when this war comes to a close? He's going to come hat in hand and ask the United States of America, all of us taxpayers who forked over hundreds of billions of dollars to rebuild his part of Ukraine. Look, the answer here is straightforward. The Russian part of Ukraine, the part that wants to be part of Russia, the part that Russia currently has, the part of Ukraine that honestly is Russian speaking, needs to probably have a line drawn down it, and Zelensky needs to ask Europe and the United States to help build back what remains of Ukraine. This is otherwise an endless war, and American taxpayers, for all that we love freedom, we are sick and tired of spending billions upon billions for a guy that can't even find where 50% of that money's gone.
If I hear, Robert, one more Dick Cheney-loving neocon war hawk talk about how this is money well spent by Washington because a large percentage of it was put back in our economy to build new weapons and munitions here in the United States, by that kind of economic logic, then what? That's an economic theory equivalent of, hey, let's invade a country like Sweden. Just think of all the jobs in the military and the weapons and the ammunition the U.S. makes. In fact, that logic about we make weapons being shipped to Ukraine or to replace the ones used in Ukraine, it is actually inflationary, because it employs people to make things they can't consume, like bombs. It pays them money, but it doesn't create supply of other consumer goods that we need and do consume.
Look, there's no
I'd like to make a couple points.
Wait, hold on. That's to Robert.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's no justification for going to war because you're going to make money on it, okay? The reality isn't even what you just described. The reality is we have run down our stockpiles. We've run down IMARS. We've run down major missile systems. We've run down a huge inventory of our own ammunition. What if we have to engage right now in Taiwan? What if we have to engage right now in another part of Europe? What if we have to engage to protect our own borders? Bottom line is, this war needs to end. Zelensky needs to straighten up and fly right. And you know what? The incentives are right there right now. Even China can be brought in on this because they don't want to keep pumping money into Russia in order to keep fighting this war. And at the end, Europe doesn't want to pump any more money into Ukraine either.
Cliff, quickly.
The bottom line here, I'm sorry, is Ukraine is the victim, Putin is the victimizer. If he thinks the U.S. is going to abandon Ukraine, the way Biden abandoned Afghanistan, the way Obama abandoned Iraq, he's going to fight on in Ukraine and beyond Ukraine. We're talking about 3% of our defense budget going to Ukraine so the Ukrainians can fight Putin, who is in a no-limits partnership with the communists in China and with Tehran. That's an axis of aggressors who wants to see that America is never great again.
Robert Charles, Cliff May, thank you both.
Jason Chaffetz joining me this morning. All right, Jason, this city is not going to recover in the short term, is it?
No, I think they're going to go further to the left. They're going to go with these progressive policies. They're going to make the city far worse. I think crime will go up. I think the economy will suffer. I think big business and wealthy individuals who create jobs will flee. They have been fleeing already. And then they try to blame Donald Trump when Donald Trump was there and building that city and building buildings and solving the city's problems. Remember when they couldn't build the ice rink and he got it done in like a few months? Yeah. I mean, Donald Trump knew how to build that city. It's got to slay him because that is his home. That's where he grew up. And to see them destroy the city the way that they have, I think it really probably is something very personal for him.
I know
and for them to blame him, come on.
I know it's a stretch, but can you see the time coming when New York City, the city itself, votes in a Republican mayor? Can you see it?
Yeah, I think things will bottom out. I thought they already had. Just walking through Times Square in Midtown is abysmal. I think each of the boroughs is just on the verge of collapse. I think parents have had enough. They're overrun by illegal immigration. And, you know, sometimes the collapse will happen and bring in somebody who's more reasonable. It helped usher in Rudy Giuliani, who helped turn that city around back in the day. And at some point, they're going to want somebody like Lee Zeldin, who ran for governor. Came pretty close.
He did. He did.
But they aren't there yet. They aren't there yet.
Yeah, another one for you, Jason. DOGE may soon have access to critical IRS systems, Social Security records, and Treasury payments. If Musk doesn't get access to all that information, all that data, how do we know what our money is being spent on?
Yeah, look, there are already probably north of 100,000 people that are given access. So it's pretty rich for the Democrats to be able to say, oh, Elon Musk, an engineer, an internal auditor that is handpicked by the president of the United States. This is exactly what America wants. They are uncovering so much waste, fraud, and abuse. And when they turn that over to the Pam Bondis of the world so they could start prosecuting people, then I think they're really going to come unglued.
By the way, the top official at the Social Security Administration has reportedly resigned after a dispute with DOGE. This is a kind of protest movement going on here, isn't it?
Yeah, well, she did the right thing. If she's not going to be part of the solution, she's going to be part of the problem, then I think she should have resigned. And to have that type of thing happen under her watch, is just, she was the acting person, but still has the type of experience. I think she did the right thing, and we'll see what role, if any, that she had in this mess that is over there at Social Security.
If they don't want Musk to have access to this information, it makes you think, well, why don't they want him to have access? What are they covering up? That's the way I look at it, and a lot of other people too.
Exactly. If you go to oversight.gov, you're going to see literally tens of thousands of open audits that have identified billions of dollars that have not been resolved. And Donald Trump's going to take a more drastic, more dramatic approach to this. And Elon Musk, if you can parallel park a rocket, then you get, guess what? You're going to get the keys to be able to do some other things in this country because nobody else knows how to do that.
Yeah, parallel parking. That's very good. Well done, Jason. We will see you again soon, I hope. And thanks for being with us today. Appreciate it. Fox has obtained exclusive footage of a high-speed chase with two Honduran nationals. Mike Tobin is joining me. Mike, it was a dramatic chase. Take us through it, please.
Well, it started with an alert about possible suspicious vehicle coming into Grundy County, but it really speaks to the issue of immigration. You know now the Illinois governor and the mayor of Chicago are opposed to immigration reform efforts from the Trump administration. But now counties in Illinois are stepping up to say they've got enough problems and they don't want to be a sanctuary.
Troop 5, he just took off on me.
Two Hondurans in the U.S. illegally lead police on a high-speed chase through cornfields an hour and a half outside Chicago.
Pit. Subject is on foot, running northbound through the field. On foot, northbound through the field. Get your hands up. Get them up.
18-year-old Royben Barahona, 23-year-old Christian Arazo Velasquez arrested. 7 pounds of fentanyl found in the car.
Three bricks.
The Illinois Safety Act eliminates cash bond. Barahona was released without bail and quickly fled to California. Velasquez is still held in the Grundy County Jail. The county chairman believes they were in Illinois because it's a sanctuary state.
If we had a less welcoming state for illegal immigration, I don't know if they would have been traveling those roadways.
The irony is it all happened in Grundy County, the first county in Illinois to push back against the Democrat governor and pass a resolution declaring the county does not welcome illegal migrants. As a result, when migrants from Texas were bused to Chicago and surrounding suburbs, Grundy County never received a busload.
And the results speak for themselves, as we haven't had the problems that other counties, municipalities have had by not being non-sanctuary.
Now, dozens of Illinois counties reached out to Grundy, copied their language, and passed their own non-sanctuary resolutions. Incidentally, Barhuna was picked up in California. He's being held for another incident in San Francisco. ICE has issued a detainer for Velasquez, requesting that they get notification if he's going to be released from the county jail. Well, Grundy County officials cannot grant that request because that would violate the Illinois Trust Act, which prevents local police from communicating with their federal counterparts over immigration matters. Stuart?
Ridiculous. But Mike Tobin, thank you very much indeed.
Well, the numbers are just incredible. Liz Peek, let's get into it. Elon Musk posted this graphic on X showing how many people in what age group there are accepting these Social Security checks. It's just pretty incredible that you see ages 110 to 119, 3.6 million. If you're 120 to 129, 3.5 million. I mean, last time I checked, Liz, there was no one in America that's 140 years old.
But if there is someone 140 years old, Maria, they sure deserve Social Security payments, and I'm all for it. Look, there are two astonishing things here. Number one, that this sloppiness and the fraud and waste has gone on for so long. Obviously, this is not something that happened overnight. It is incredible to me that people working in our government have had such laziness, such inertia, that they have never even bothered to look at these numbers that apparently are pretty easy to find. Number two, what's really incredible is that anyone is objecting to this because, as Caroline Levitt pointed out, this isn't just about hauling in all those illegal and fraudulent and wasteful payments. It is about making sure that if you're 60 years old, you're going to get Social Security payments from a healthy institution for the next many years. So how can anyone object to this? I have no idea.
Well, I think, Cheryl, the Democrats are objecting to it because they're embarrassed. They've been supposedly stewards of our economy and stewards of our government for how many years, depending on who you're talking about, and this has been happening on their watch.
The agency's been asleep at the wheel, and I think that is where I'm so glad you brought this up, because it's the system. You know, the why did this happen? And actually, Elon Musk did post about it. He said that the logic flow diagram for the Social Security system looks insane. All capital letters, he wrote, Maria. He says no other person actually knows how it works. You need to get forensic accounting. You need to get programmers. You need to get people from DOGE, that team. You need to get experts on technology and algorithms and accounting systems in there. Why that has never happened in all the decades that you've had thousands of reports about Social Security fraud, about checks that just kept going to somebody's residence after they'd passed away. I mean, come on, Maria. It's just, I can't believe we're finally addressing this. Like, I'm happy.
I mean, for so many years, Chris, that's all you heard from politicians. You know, we have to get rid of fraud, abuse, and waste. And yet, what? They didn't actually go and look to see where the money was going?
This bloated bureaucracy is just so. The idea that somehow some nameless bureaucrat could do a better job than Elon Musk is absurd. And the fact that where are these directors of Social Security been? This is the first thing you check in your first day. Are we paying anybody we shouldn't be? It's millions and millions of dollars. They keep talking about the viability of Social Security. That's the first thing you should have done instead of talking about raising taxes and cutting benefits. This should have been number one. So, I mean, these people should be ashamed of themselves.
And of course, right now, we've got the debate over how to cut, you know, to come up with offsets to actually afford President Trump's agenda, being money for the border, money for defense. And, you know, they're talking about cutting into mandatory spending. Okay, instead of just going back and looking at where the money is, which is what Elon Musk and DOGE are doing from the beginning, they're talking about cutting into mandatory spending. It's just outrageous.